Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I make oil-free tamales. A typical Mexican tamal recipe will call for about a cup and a half of oil, depending on the size of your batch. But just by simply omitting the oil from this recipe, we're easily saving at least 2,000 to 3,000 calories, which is kind of a big deal. So let's get right into it. First, I'm going to get started off by boiling some red dry hatch chili peppers. This is going to be used for the masa as well as a filling. That's why it's the very first thing I do. I go ahead and submerged a bunch of chiles, but I actually only needed about 8 of them for this recipe. I went ahead and brought some hot water to a boil, and I added some corn husk to the water. I did go ahead and turn off the water so it did not continue to boil. This is done so the corn husk can go ahead and soften up. So when it comes time to rolling up the tamales, they'll be nice and cool off, but still malleable. Next, I am going to start making the masa. I went ahead and used about 3 cups worth of maseca, or about 1/3 of the bag. As you can see, I did not actually measure it, so that is my rough estimate. I'm sorry about that. Next, I went ahead and used about 1 tablespoon worth of baking powder. Since I did not use any oil in this recipe, the baking powder is going to replace the oil. Next, I went ahead and seasoned the masa with some sea salt, and this next 2 ingredients are totally optional. You can always season the masa with whatever you like, but I went ahead and grabbed this organic harissa seasoning and added it to the bowl. Like I said, that's completely optional. You do not have to use the same seasonings that I did. And then I went ahead and grabbed some nutritional yeast as well. I like to add nutritional yeast to my food because it adds extra B vitamins, but like I said, it is not essential for this recipe. Next, I went ahead and brought about 1 liter of water to a boil. You can either use just regular water or vegetable broth. I went ahead and used this not chicken seasoning. I did not realize when I bought it that it does have a tiny bit of oil in these tiny cubes. So you can, like I said, you can always use vegetable broth and completely omit this seasoning, or just add any seasonings that you like. Next, I went ahead and checked on the chiles and they were ready. So I added 8 of them to my blender. Like I mentioned earlier, I only used 8 of them. And then after that, I went ahead and used the broth that was left over from the chiles, and I poured that into the blender as well. Please be careful because the chiles are really hot, and so is this water. As you can see, it's steaming. I went ahead and used 2 more cubes of this not chicken seasoning. But like I mentioned earlier, you don't have to use this seasoning. You can use any seasoning that you like. That's completely oil-free. Now it's time to make the dough, or the masa. I did go ahead and use this entire liter of broth that I made. Be very careful during this step. You do want to go ahead and make sure you get all of the dry maseca. And I did go ahead and add the salsa to the masa as well to make it nice and pretty. You could add more or less depending on how you like it. It is super hot, so be very careful during this process. After stirring it up a lot, I realized that it was still super sticky, so I went ahead and added a tiny bit more maseca to the masa. But like I said, be very, very careful because you can easily overdo it and then you'll end up with too much. Like I said, less is more. It was still way too hot to knead it with my hands, so I did go ahead and just let it cool off for a little bit. Now it's time to make the filling. I did go ahead and use some nopales, which are a very typical Mexican delicacy, I would say. And they're very, very good for your digestive system. But for these tamales, you don't have to use nopales if you don't like them. You could always use beans, potatoes, vegan cheese, and rajas. You can get really creative and just add any type of mixture you want into the tamales. It does not have to be nopales, but I decided to do nopales because I love them. So I went ahead and used the rest of the salsa to cook the nopales in. As you can see, it's still very liquidy, so I'm just going to let some of the water evaporate, and yeah. Now that my masa has cooled off a little bit, I can go ahead and start kneading it with my hands into a nice ball. You want to make sure that your masa is not too dry to where it's still cracking, but you also don't want it to be too wet to where it's still sticky and sticking to your hands. So like I said, add just a tiny bit more masa or just a tiny bit more water as you go. That way you don't overdo it. In this case, less is more. Alrighty, so this is where the magic happens. Here I have my nopales, fully cooked. I have my corn husks that are nice and soft and ready to go. And the masa. Tools that you will need for this is going to be some type of plastic and a tortilla maker or tortilla flattener. I actually don't know the actual terminology for that tool, but you know what I mean. And if you don't have one of these tortilla makers, you can just use a spoon. You don't have to have this fancy contraption. I just really like it because it makes the whole process so much easier and it evenly distributes the masa. So yes, so I'm going to go ahead and roll it to a little ball, place it onto the corn husk, and place the plastic bag on top of it and smash it. As you can see here, the masa is evenly distributed. Next, I am going to go ahead and scoop some of the filling into the tamal. You want to make sure you don't overdo it because it can easily spill out of the tamal. And you're just going to want to fold it, make sure that the two sides of the masa touch each other. Fold it and fold it like this. Don't know how to describe that with words, but that's how you do it. Okay, hold up. So during this part, I did not realize that I was smearing the masa on the wrong side of the corn husk. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you right now that if you do it on this, so you can't really tell the difference, but whenever you're touching it, one side is going to be just slightly more smooth and almost like waxy, and the other side is just going to be straight up bumpy. I put the masa on the straight up bumpy side, so some of my tamales actually ended up like sticking to the leaf. So make sure you put like the masa on the soft side with like the wax or the smoother texture. Okay? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this process over and over again until I have used up all of my ingredients. Okay, I did not show this, but as I was making the tamales, I was placing them inside of this large steamer. And I made sure to place them with the tails facing down. And here I have a large pot of water. You want to make sure you don't fill it too much to where the water is going to get inside of the tamales. But you don't want it to be too low because then all of the liquid will steam out and you can burn the tamales. Did go ahead and steam them on low for about 1 hour, and this is the finished product. As you can see, I went ahead and served them next to a side of greens. When you're eating things like this, you want to make sure you're still eating plenty of vegetables so you can get all of the nutrients you need for the day. If you decide to try the recipe, go ahead and tag me at alondrita_o on Instagram. And if you do like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and click subscribe, and in the comments below, comment what your favorite Mexican dish is, and maybe I'll go ahead and veganize it for you. Anywho, I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. I love you all so much, and I hope to see you soon.